there is just a flood, a maelstrom of AI generated slop.
So I am springboarding off of what B said. If you're interested in Old English history and the Old English language, go see his video and follow him. But what I wanted to talk about was the use of AI. Now, I've been doing some research, hopefully for some videos in the future on some local, Long Island history about the American Revolution. We're in the midst of the 250th anniversary, and so I've been, I thought it would be interesting to look at some local patriots and maybe even some loyalists if I can find them, and find their graves and to talk a little bit about them and what they did in the war. Um, so there was a few individuals that I had trouble finding a little information. I was curious if I, might be able to help, the Chat GPT or DeepSeek, the Chinese program, could help me in this kind of research. So I was mainly using DeepSeek at first, but what I found was that they're completely unreliable. And so let me explain. So there's a cemetery in Wading River where a local patriot is buried, and he was only 14 in 1781, right? And he served from 1781 to 1783 at the end of the war, right, in the Suffolk County Militia, and he's buried in Wading River at the family plot, and the family plot is named Oliver's Hill. And so I was curious, using it, and I was testing it out. And one of the things that it said that was inaccurate was that it was named Oliver's Hill because of the Oliver family that settled there in the 18th century. And that's not true. It's named that because of a man named Oliver Hudson. And it's actually one of the oldest cemeteries on Long Island. It dates back to the 17th century, and it's from the Hudson family. And the patriot who was buried there was Henry Hudson, no relation to the explorer, but I suppose he's probably named after that. And his brother, I believe, was a loyalist who had a son named Oliver Hudson, and that's who the cemetery is named after. And another thing that they did, which is really kind of messed up, is it completely fabricated an entire story about two brothers by the name of Nathaniel and Samuel Phelps. And the story that it said was that these men were local loyalists and that they were spying for the British and they were raiding Patriot militia and and things like that. And they were on the run and they hid out at another brother's house called William Phelps in Smithtown, and he turned them in, right, to Benjamin Talmadge, Colonel Benjamin Talmadge, and they were hung near Bread and Cheese Hollow Road. And according to DeepSeek, there's a monument on a boulder, a plaque put there by the Daughters of the American Revolution about that and about the naming of the street. And what's really messed up is that it how it messed up really is that I know the history of Smithtown and why the Bread and Cheese Hollow Road is named after it. It's named after that because of uh, Richard Smith, right? Now the legend is, and this is probably completely made up, but it is the local legend and why it's named that, right? Now the town Smithtown is named after Richard Smith. Richard Smith, supposedly, according to legend, saved an Indian princess, right? The chief's daughter. And uh, at a thank you for him, he said, if you can ride this bull all day, all the land that you can ride it around is yours. Now, that's completely messed up. There's no way that's true, but people believe it's true. And according to the legend, he took a break at lunchtime and stopped at where Bread and Cheese Hollow Road is and had bread and cheese, and that's why it's named Bread and Cheese Hollow Road. That's supposedly where he sat down and took a break. But so they said that it was because the Patriots, right? Because Long Island was under British occupation. would meet there. They would gather there, and they would have bread and cheese. Uh, that's not why it's named that. But so please do not use any of these programs for your research. Do your own research. Now, I would say maybe in a pinch, it might put you in some right direction for some sources, but I would not use DeepSeek for any of that. Like if you wanted to create a story about something completely fictitious, obviously completely made up this whole story. It completely made up sources that when I said, provide me a link for this. You click it and the source, page not found. Um, so it's completely useless for that. But I didn't really use ChatGPT too much. ChatGPT is a little bit more restricted. You got to pay for it. Um, I was using the free version, and but anyway, I wouldn't use any of those. Just got to do your own research the old-fashioned way. I would say, Wikipedia, in a pinch, will point you in the right direction for sources a lot better. I wouldn't rely on Wikipedia as a primary source, but it would put you in the right direction. At least people who've, done the research for you will cite sources, and you can go and find those sources and then verify whether this is true. But because there's so much nonsense out there and stuff, I would really highly advise people not to use any of these programs for their research.